this, oh, it is on. Hello. Thank you so much. That was the esteemed Maggie Stieffather. Hello. This is Teen. So some of you might know me because I've written some books. A lot of them. And I get a lot of questions about my books and me, and most of the questions revolve around how have you written so many books? Where can I get some of that energy to write so many of those books? Where do you get your ideas is the main question. I think we all get that one, right? And I have a friend named R.L. Stein who wrote the Goosebumps series. I don't know if you are familiar with it. And he always says, I get my ideas at the idea store, which I think is like IKEA. But that's kind of a smart alecky answer, because I think that if you go back to my childhood, I can tell you how it all started. And I'm just going to give you a little hint. It started with my parents. And it's really their fault, because they were huge storytellers too. They would insist that when we would come home from school every day, we would tell them about our day at the dinner table instead of sitting around and watching TV while we ate. We had to tell them what happened to us. And whoever told the funniest story got the most attention. So that's what we would do. We would sit around and we would talk about what we had done that day in school. And my parents were also huge readers. My mom was an English teacher and my dad taught college level quantitative business analysis. Okay, which is basically math. Okay. So I was not very good at math. And so when I would go to school, I still had the storytelling thing. I loved the storytelling part of my, upbringing, but the math part was not so good. So when I would sit in math class, I would still be thinking about, the excellent story I was going to tell at dinner that night, and I wouldn't be paying so much attention to the math. And my parents were such big readers, they would take us every week to the library. And I would check out so many books. I loved, A Little Princess, A Wrinkle in Time. Loved writing fan fiction about a little princess, A Wrinkle in Time. And I also loved to draw, so I would also draw comic strips about Star Wars and everything. And I actually draw that in my notebooks in math class instead of actually doing my homework. And that was kind of a problem because, when you have two teachers as your parents, they kind of expect you to get good grades in all your classes, not just art. And it was upsetting, so I would come home and they'd be like, what is going on with, the drawings and the margins? And it was, it was sad. And all of the kids that lived in my neighborhood, because I lived in a college town, and all of the kids that I grew up with, their parents were also professors, and they got it. They would get good grades. They weren't drawing these weird little pictures in the margins, and they weren't sitting in class and thinking about, what would happen right now if a spaceship came down and aliens came out, and then one of them came up to me and said, Meg, you are the queen of the planet, and we need to take you back there. I mean, seriously, that's what I was thinking about in class. It was a problem. But not to me. Well, it was a problem to everybody who was expecting me to bring home good grades. So I was kind of like an outsider, is kind of how I felt. Like I didn't really fit in, and not because I was queen of an alien planet, necessarily. So it was a little bit of a situation going on, especially because I lived in Indiana, and my brother was 6'8", so he was a huge basketball star. I would try out for the sports teams, and I'd be waiting for the ball to come my way, but every time it did, I'd be thinking, what if a giant spaceship came down right now? And, no, they don't want you on the team when you're doing that. But there was one particular story that I read. I'm not going to say I got it out of the library, but it may have happened. I think actually it was a book that my mom had. It was called Edith Hamilton's Greek Mythology. And there was a story in there, the myth of Persephone. Okay, Persephone was a girl who also didn't quite fit in, kind of like me. Her mom was the goddess of springtime, or the harvest, Demeter, and she didn't want Persephone hanging out at Olympus with all the other gods and goddesses, because the gods and goddesses didn't have a really good reputation. They were like turning other girls into trees and plants and stuff. She didn't want that to happen to Persephone. So she had Persephone kind of hanging out in a different place, and one day when Persephone was hanging out, in spite of all her mom's best efforts, the god of the underworld, Hades, saw her and he snatched her. And he took her down to the underworld. And Hades wasn't around Olympus either, so it was kind of like, I don't know, a match made in the underworld. And something about that really drew me to the myth, because I was like, wow, here's two people who don't fit in, and they found each other. And I was like, wow, where's my Hades? To take me away. Somewhere where I can be queen of the underworld. And that myth stayed with me for so long, and I would always draw like little pictures of Persephone and Hades in my algebra notebook, and I'd come home and my dad would be like, oh my god, you have an F in algebra! What's gonna happen to you? I got a 410 on my math SATs, and I could not get into any college, except the one where he taught. It was horrible. I mean, it sounds funny, but it was actually really horrible because, you know, it's a lot of stress. And I don't know if any of you are going through that right now, but I want to let you know, I hear you. And I feel for you. But here's the thing about Persephone. So she was the queen of the underworld, but guess what she also was? She turned out to be the goddess of springtime. So even though her story was very, very dark, there was maybe a glimmer of hope in it. So after I was going to college, the one college I got into, where I majored in art, because even though I loved to write, and I loved writing stories all the time, I was too afraid to major in creative writing, because I just thought, gosh, if I major in creative writing and I graduate and I start trying to send these stories out and they get rejected, I will be so devastated, because I just didn't have enough faith in myself that I could do that. But you know what, I don't like art that much. I kind of like it, but it's okay, so I'll just major in art. And when I graduated, I moved to New York City and I tried to be an illustrator. And I got rejected all the time, but I didn't care, because I didn't like it that much. Although it turns out you need money. My dad was right, okay? So, I'm living in New York, I don't have any money, I can't make it as an illustrator. I have all these stories that I've written forever. And something happened that changed everything, really like in the blink of an eye. And that was that my dad died. And I realized in that moment, not that he was right about the math, although he was, because you really should pay attention, but that there's something you've always wanted to do, you need to go out there and try it. If you really love something, if you have a passion that you've always wanted to try and follow, you need to just go for it. And so the day that I got home from his funeral, I started sending my stories out to see if I could get them published. And what do you think happened? They got rejected. Oh my gosh, every day in the mail I got rejection letters after rejection letter. But at the time, my husband, I told him and I was like, honey, should I just give up? Because, I don't know, this is not working out. And he said, I love golf. I'm a terrible golfer. I'm not going to give up golf just because everyone tells me I'm terrible at it. I love it. I'm going to keep doing it. And I was like, you're right. So I kept sending the stories out, and eventually my mom started dating one of my teachers. They're supposed to go, oh my god, this is so gross. Yes, it is. It's gross. They're still together. I have to see them. When I go home at Christmas. So I started writing about that, because every time something really upset me, I would start writing about it. And I started writing about that, and that story turned into The Princess Diaries, which actually was a toss-up at the time, because I was going to have the story be about a girl whose mom's dating her teacher, and either aliens come down and tell her that she's the queen of the alien planet, or that she turns out to be the princess of a small country and she didn't know about it. But I thought the other one was more realistic. So that story got published. And I continued to write, and now I decided, wow, you know what? There's that story of Persephone and how she got kidnapped and taken down to the underworld. I'd really like to do like a modern version of that, about a girl who's just a normal high school girl, and maybe, she dies. It could happen. And while she's dead, she goes to the underworld, and she meets this guy resuscitated. She comes back to life. And, you know, she's back doing her normal high school thing. And the guy starts following her around again because he wants to take her back to the underworld. But she doesn't want to go because she's a, you know, modern, empowered female like we all are. So it's not like that great myth. Except, the thing about Persephone is that she's the goddess of springtime. So, there's hope. Even though she has this dark thing following her around, and she may end up queen of the underworld, we don't know. She's also the goddess of springtime. So, it's kind of like my story. Like, it was very dark, very sad for a long time, but there was this awesome thing that happened, and that was that I think if you follow your dream, and if there's something you really love, and you stick to it, and you don't let anybody tell you that it's not going to happen, I think you can do it. So the moral is, don't abandon hope. All right, anyway, thank you so much for listening, and now...